On behalf of the Board of Governors of the State University System, I want to welcome Governor Scott to our meeting today. Governor Scott, our board appreciated you coming to our June meeting, and we are honored that you could join us again today. Your continued interest in higher education is evident, and the members of this board deeply appreciate your dedication to the issues facing higher education. During this meeting, our board will be addressing several areas critical to the future of higher education. Our facilities task force in the last hour received strategic recommendations to address shortfalls in funding for our higher education facilities. We will also hear an update from Budget and Finance Committee Vice Chair Tom Kuntz on the development of a performance-based model. I asked the Budget and Finance Committee to create this model for reviewing potential tuition differential increases after our June board meeting. This board is committed to tackling the difficult issues and looks forward to working with you as the 2013 legislative session approaches. Our board shares with you your belief that higher education is the key to creating the high-wage, high-skilled jobs which will transform Florida's economy. Our focus is not only in providing the highest quality education possible to our students, but also in ensuring the system operates efficiently and provides a return on investment for our students and taxpayers. Thank you again and welcome.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to be here. And two in a row, right?
That's right.
That's good.
We meet in January.
Sorry. Well, thanks for the opportunity to be here. And I guess the first thing is I just want to thank everybody for all you're doing. We have so many things to be proud of with regard to our education system in the state. And probably the biggest thing is we've got so many people that are committed to doing a great job in education. And I know a lot of you don't get paid a lot of money for what you do here. But everybody, I just want to tell you that as governor, it's a joy to be governor of Florida because you can brag about a lot of things. And a lot of things you can brag about is our great education system. There's always things we can do better, but there's a lot of things to brag about. I just want to recognize a couple of people. Senator Dietert is here. I'm not sure where she's, but she is. It's somebody that I've gotten to work with. I've been governor for 22 months, and she's been a great person to work with. She's, just like I am, very focused on education, jobs, keep the cost of living low, the same thing. And Representative Boyd is here. He's like me, he was a newbie 22 months ago and has had a lot of success. We had a bill together that we worked on to try to, should have a very positive impact on auto accident fraud that we got done, which most people didn't think we would get done. So I just want to thank everybody at New College for the opportunity to be here. And so you've got a very good reputation. So congratulations. Also, my chief of staff is here. I don't know where Adam's sitting, but Adam Hollingsworth. Adam has been with me since July, and before that he was the chief of staff for Mayor Payton in Jacksonville, and is doing a great job. And then also I want to recognize Kim McDougall, who works in the governor's office all on education policy. And then Commissioner Pam Stewart and I have had the opportunity to work together a lot, and she's doing a great job. In September, I guess it was, we got to visit a lot of schools, and we got to hear from parents, teachers, students, PTA, union members, superintendents, school board members, and a lot of other individuals just about, they talked a lot about K through 12, but they talk about education and their goals for education. So here's this. Running for office, I ran because I was worried about the direction of the country, the direction of our state. I knew from coming from my background, living in public housing, going to community college for a year, joined the Navy at 18, all the things I've gotten to do, I know that we need jobs. And jobs are all tied to education. In my case, any success I've had, any achievement I've had, any opportunities I've had, it's tied that I got an education. And it wasn't easy because for a lot of people like me, my parents didn't have the money to pay for anything. So I was very appreciative that I got the GI Bill, but before that, I was able to get a job so I could pay for education. So if you talk to families across our state, they care about three things. And you can talk to almost any family, I think they'll all tell you the same thing. everybody wants a job. I've not met one person in the state that said, I'd like not to work. They all want a job. Two, they're anxious that their child gets a great education because they know that that's the chance to live the American dream. It's very difficult to get anywhere in this country, anywhere in the world, if you can't get an education. And they know the numbers. Like in our state, if you get a 4-year degree, average income is about $44,000. If you don't just get through high school, it's $23,000. So a dramatic difference. So I think everybody knows the numbers are dramatic. So one, everybody wants a job. Two, everybody wants a great education for their child. And three, they're frustrated with the amount of taxes they have to pay, and they just want to get value. They're okay with paying taxes if they feel like they got something for it. They want some value. They want it's a trade-off. They are giving us dollars. Anybody in government, they're giving us some dollars, and they want a return for that. They want healthcare safety nets. They want education system. They want a variety of things. But whatever it is, they want to get a return on whatever they give us. And they all think that they're giving us more than they'd like to give us at whatever level. So every area, whether it's our Medicaid program for those that can't afford health care, or whether it's education, or whether it's elder affairs, I think about how can we get value for the taxpayer, how can we provide the service for the individual that needs it, or the family that needs it. And it's really tied to two things. What's it cost, and what's the result? And so everything that I've tried to do is in every agency that we have, say, okay, why are we doing this? Don't just do it because we did it before. What do we want out of this? What's the measurable goal? And then can we do it less expensively? And it's no fun to try to focus on the cost side, but you have to do it. I had the retired CEO of IBM come in to give a talk to some of the leadership in state government. And what he talked about is, in their business, he basically has to reduce his cost about 10% a year, year in and year out. Last week I was up at L3 at a manufacturing plant they have in Crestview. And to keep the business they had reduced their prices 15%. So, it's tough. I mean, it's hard out there. And it's the easiest thing is to spend more money, but there's a lot of pressure on how much things cost. So the way I try to think about everything we do in state government is, what's the value decision? Can we make it more affordable? And what do we want out of it? Now, our university system, our higher ed system, and we're not here to talk about state colleges, but whether you're talking about K through 12 state colleges or universities, we have a lot to brag about. And so I did this in the form of a quiz, but we have in our state, we have a reputation already, nationwide and worldwide. So just go through some of these, and it just shows you, because it shows you how well we are doing. Not that we can't get better. And I like to focus on contests. And I like to win. I have zero interest in losing. I think that we should be number one in almost everything. I mean, I think about our state for a second. You think about it. We have 19 million people. We should be the number one place. We know people want to come and visit here. 90 million people come as tourists every year, and they're going to keep doing that if we do a good job. And they want to live here. I mean, people are moving here, and they want to live here, and they want to get to work here. And people from around the world are flocking here. You can go to, and we're a melting pot. So we have every reason to be the number one place for whatever we care about. On job creation, we've got the expansion of the Panama Canal. We don't have a personal income tax. We have a right-to-work state. We've got the expansion of Latin American economies. We've got 15 seaports. I mean, everything you can think about. If you want to be governor, and I go to governor meetings, I mean, they're all jealous. I mean, would you want to be governor of any other state but Florida? You'd want to be governor of Florida. We have so many opportunities to do better than anybody else. But also I've learned in business, being in business all my life, the only way I ever got there is I set a goal, then I measured the living daylights out of it. And so I look at whether it's CEO Magazine now calling us the second best place to do business, I want to be number one. I've told Governor Perry his 8-year run is up. We're going to win soon. Whether it's, you name the issue, workforce boards, everything. We should be the winner. So here's some things of why we should brag about our higher ed. Number one, how many Florida colleges were ranked in the top 100 colleges in the country as the best value for in-state tuition in the country by Kiplinger? It's B, it's 6. That's impressive. Which Florida college was ranked second in Kiplinger's best value in state colleges, best in state values in public colleges 2012? Bernie probably knows that. University of Florida, number 2. And so in September of this year, our STEM job openings are up 9% over last year. How many STEM openings did our state report in September? There's a lot, 64,000 job openings. Big opportunity. Because if you think about families, they just want jobs. 64,000. And when you think about a job, it impacts a family. Every job changes a family's life. Every job. 4, Lumosity, hope I said that right, recently ranked colleges and universities based on cognitive performance of their students. One Florida school ranked in the top 25 in all schools evaluated. Which school was it? Against UF. Hey. Next, the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity report showed Florida has how many current job openings seasonally adjusted? Make sure I got this right. 250 to 300,000 job openings. We've got a lot of job openings. In the last 22 months, here's what's happened in our state. Unemployment has dropped faster than any state in the country, down 2.4%. Almost 160,000 private sector jobs. The number of people on unemployment has dropped from 1.1 million to about a little over 800,000. The number of people on unemployment has dropped from 568,000 to a little over 200,000. So we've got, if you look at all these, we're headed in the right direction. One thing that, the next is, one thing that people ask me as I travel the state, does lottery put money into education? Because, if you go around the state, people expect us and want us to invest in education. In the 2010 to 2011 fiscal year, how much money from the Florida lottery was appropriated for Florida schools? $1.3 billion. And they're doing better this year. Cindy O'Connell runs it. I think most of you know her. She's doing a great job, and the number will be bigger this year. This one will surprise you, number 7. In September of this year, Florida regional workforce boards have placed a record number of Floridians in jobs. How many did they help place? Now, put this in perspective. Last December, we started ranking them on a daily basis. There's 24 workforce boards. It's federal money. It's about $400 million a year. We didn't have any measurement of how many jobs they were filling. We had some issues how they were spending their money, but now we have a daily ranking. And last month they filled over 52,000 jobs in 1 month. 52,000 jobs. And I think October they're on track to they did a little over 50,000 again. So you can see that a lot of things that we're doing by creating all this measurement is having a dramatic impact. Next, you remember a few years ago how Florida started losing people for the first time since, I think, 1946. Migration into Florida in 2011 was 68,000. In 2012, it's estimated to be 134,000. So our state's headed in the right direction. Now, you just go back, it's all tied to jobs, education, keep the cost of living low. Now, what I've tried to think of, and I know I've asked a lot of people in the room their views on this, what's the right way to measure how we're doing in higher ed? The way I think about it is I step back and think about my life. In my life, I wanted a job. My father had a 6th grade education. My mom finished high school. My parents I lived in public housing. I wanted a job. And I had, when I was growing up, you didn't have any idea what types of jobs are out there, and there's so many more jobs out there today. But I wanted a job, and I wanted to be able to afford my education. So I try to think about, we need to make sure we put the right amount of money into all, whether it's K through 12 state colleges or universities, but how should we measure them? And the way I think about it is affordability and results. So what are the 3 things that I think are the right things, but my goal is to put these out here and get y'all's feedback rather than, I In business, what I've always learned is, somebody's got to put out a proposal. It gives a greater chance you get something done, and I don't have any problem with me being right or wrong. I just want to get everybody a job in our state. The first one I have is the percentage of grads who either get a job or further their education. Because what we don't want to do is have individuals finish in our universities, whether it's undergraduate or state college or graduate programs, and they've done it and they think they're going to get a job and there's no jobs out there for them. If you think about it from your standpoint, that would be the most disappointing thing, that you put the time and money into that and then you didn't get what you thought you were going to get. Number two, how much do people make? And number three is what it costs to get the degree. Because if you think about it, it's a return on investment. I mean, if you knew that you're going to spend 10 years and you're going to make very little, no more money, the odds are you wouldn't spend your time or your money doing it. So, one, when they finish up whatever program, did they go on to further their education or did they get a job? Two, how much are they going to make? And then three, what it costs to get there. So I think, and my goal is to work with the legislature, and I believe in, and I tell people this, and I told people this in business, I think there's plenty of money to invest in whatever works. There's never enough money if it's a bad deal. Now, I believe everybody you elect wants to have a great higher education system. I know I do. Not that it's easy. Anybody that sits in this job, I'm going to tell you how it works. Nobody comes to your office and asks for less money. And everybody asks for more money, or more. They have more ways to solve the problem than they're solving it today. So you pick the issue, they've got an additional way for you to solve it, and they don't want anybody else that's trying to solve it not to get their money also. But not one person has said to me, they really like me to raise their taxes. So here's the way our state budget is right now. Here's the positive, and here are the problems. The positive is, since I've been elected, I think every month, year over year, our state budget, the state revenues have gone up. And our state is funded primarily by sales taxes and property taxes. But I think every month we've been up. So our economy is getting better. So that's the positive. Here's the problems. The two biggest problems we have is, one, Medicaid, a health care program for those that can't afford it, has been growing at 3.5 times the growth rate of general revenue. And it's been doing that for a long time, 3.5 times. It'd be one thing if it was a $30 million program, but it's over a $20 billion program. So that's one issue. So we've got to figure out a way that we can provide the right safety net for our citizens that can't afford health care, but it's got to be at a price that we can afford to pay for it. So that's one issue. Another issue is we have a pension plan that's over, depending on what the actuaries, there's a new one coming out, but it's over $20 billion, I think it's over $20 billion underfunded right now. And to put that in perspective, the annual revenue in the state is, I think this year will be about $24 billion. So it's almost 100% of 1 year's general revenues. So those are the two big drivers. So the positive is we should be up right now, unless something changes, over $1 billion increase in the collections. What we've got to deal with is we've got to deal with Medicaid growth, and we've had a program that we passed our first session that would help control the growth rate of Medicaid, and still hasn't been approved by the federal government in over a year. And then we've got to deal with the state pension plan, which is underfunded. So, I'm be glad to answer any questions or get any of your, probably be better to get any of your advice. But I'd like to get your ideas on how much we need for higher ed. How do we get a result? How should we measure it? How should we allocate it? All those things. And if you've anybody that's done this job, basically, I have to be in a position to finish my budget by the first part of February, which means really the latter part of December. So, in the meantime, in the next less than 8 weeks now, I want to have a good conversation about how we do this. But thank you. I just want to again, probably the most important thing is thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your commitment to all of our kids and just getting our economy going again. And you are, Bernie and I got to be on Squawk Box, 3 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago together, and you are doing, and all the schools are doing a variety of things, but we do have a lot of things that are happening around our schools that are helping businesses grow here. And I know there's a lot more to do, but every one of you is doing something in that regard. So thank you very much.
Governor, if I think I'll start with a question. And I think the 3 goals you outlined are terrific. And if you look at the great systems that are around the country, a Texas system or a California system or Michigan or North Carolina, I think, I would guess, but I don't know because I haven't, that they would measure up pretty well on these answers to these questions. They also have significant investments in the research side of things, which translates to, different measures. And what role do you think, since we're have a lot of research universities that we're dealing with, what role do you think that plays in improving the research side of things for our universities?
I think research is very important. I think, look, one of the issues we're dealing with now is at the state level, for a variety of reasons, like cancer research.
Right.
Okay, we put money into cancer research. You look at our state, we as our revenues grow, we got to look at putting more money into cancer research as an example. How do you allocate the dollars? Okay, so we put Moffitt, University of Miami, UF, I think USF, I think variety have come together and said, what's the right way of doing that? Because what I'd rather do is rather than make the decision on what might be perceived to be political,
right,
let's make it where it said, okay, what's the goal we want? So where should we allocate those dollars? But absolutely, we ought to be putting money into to research. Now, we've got to make sure we get a return on it.
That's right.
So, but absolutely, and we've the other thing we have to do is figure out how we take any research that because the universities own it. How do we use that, and if we can, commercialize it so we can hopefully make a profit and help put more money back into our system. I got plenty of friends that have done that out in California with the University of California, San Diego.
Right.
And I know a lot of y'all are already doing that.
President Barron.
Thank you very much, Governor. And I believe those metrics are good ones and worthy goals, and we should all be working and striving towards them. My only worry is that if the set of metrics is too small, we may miss certain elements and have outcomes that may not be exactly what we want. And so I would argue for a set that includes inputs and what happens in the university and the outputs and even some of the outcomes are there. So I'll just give you a couple of examples. The 2 lowest average wages for graduates are educators, K through 12, coming out of a college of education, of course, which is important to the mission of the state, and fine arts is the very lowest. And yet we know that here are extremely talented people, and they go into the fine arts because they're gifted, and this is what they want to do with their lives, but yet their salary is very low. So I wouldn't want to disadvantage in one example something important to the state, and in another example something that's very important to the individual. Another example is that if those metrics are purely outputs and you're only measuring it on graduates, then, for example, you don't include retention and the actual rate of graduation. So I could accept a large number of students, not graduate them at all, and the metric on my performance would be based only on what came out at the end point, even though that might be a fraction of the number of students that I have. And so that also might change the way we're thinking in terms of how we treat our students, and yet taxpayers are spending an enormous amount of money for that freshman year and that sophomore year, and if they don't graduate, then that also becomes an issue. A third example of it is if we take an example of a commuter school, those graduation rates are different. If you take the example of individuals that are economically disadvantaged nationally, those students are less successful. Now, I'm very proud of the fact that Florida State University has a higher than predicted success rate for economically disadvantaged students that come into the university. But here's a case where you also might be looking at it that your predicted outcome will be worse in a performance metric if you accept an economically disadvantaged student. And so I think these are arguments whereby these three metrics that you've outlined are things that we should be doing. We should have been doing them all along. Right now, I think we're wrestling with how do we even get the data to do this, because it's a little bit of a challenge. A few other states, like the state of Virginia, just completed a survey. It's interesting, Virginia, Virginia Tech, and William and Mary, the three highest ranked universities, do the poorest. Partly because of the types of students that they're producing and what they do. For instance, entrepreneurial students that are self-employed do not end up on the database. So there's challenges on that side. So I think we really need to do this. I really think we need to be able to develop the tools to measure these outcomes. But I just hope that it's a set of broader metrics so that we don't end up actually torquing this system in ways that I don't think most of us would want, while at the same time we see that this is an objective. So it may be that the standard has to be how our students do in fine arts compared to other students financially, rather than just a strict dollar amount, just as an example. But, you know, I for one am more than happy to sign up to these metrics here.
Add on to President Barron's comment before you respond is tomorrow we're going to have a little more of this conversation, and what you said, I think there's some validity to that. We don't have all the data. One way to get the data is actually to put it in as a metric where the money is going to flow because of how you perform based on the data. But it's also this is a journey. And I think what you'll see tomorrow is a suggestion on these type of metrics, along with some others that you suggested, whether it's retention rates or graduation rates, so we can get to the right place. And so we have time dedicated tomorrow to talk about that. And just the one on the cost of getting into the degree, Governor, is I'm hoping we can start to celebrate that we're 41st in the country in terms of cost instead of aspire to get to be median. Well, we have time tomorrow to talk about it.
Yeah, if you think about it, we like the fact that we're one of the lowest tax states. So, you know, tuition is a tax. Now, we want to make sure that we invest the right amount of money and get a return. I mean, it's basically just a return on investment. So,
Governor, Norman
Yes, sir.
Tripp. For a couple of years, I, in the student representative, not Cortez, others, were the only two no votes on tuition increases. Last year, I thought we got into a very embarrassing situation. Frank with you, we didn't let the committee process work, and we didn't have our discussion there, and it got out on the floor. And to be frank with you, those in the public looking at us probably saw us as an embarrassing moment. I, for the first time, voted to just stop the discussion sometimes because it was clear that we didn't have a direction. I feel the same way. I don't know why we're not proud that we make education affordable. I came from the same circumstances as you, and the only reason I'm here is because of the opportunities that I could get. It may be a time to be looking at some of the programs like Bright Futures. It may have been great at its time, but is it now putting money in the hands of people that really don't need it? And therefore, the middle class and the lower middle class, they're being frozen out. I'm very concerned about a teacher that has 3 kids that's trying to get them into college. about a fireman, about a policeman. And that's been my conversation, and I think we're coming around to recognizing that we can't leave a whole sector behind in this state, or we're going to have to fund them in another way.
Right.
And so I think this kind of conversation is really necessary. I do believe that it's probably archaic that a university has to base its budget a year after. That doesn't work. The budgeting system for the universities, if the business had to set its budget at the end of the year and not before the year, when it didn't really know what its revenues are going to be, it would be difficult. As we've moved more towards a tuition basis, in fact, they do know a little more about what their revenue is, so it's not quite as bad as it was. But I think we're on the right track. And, the idea, the other thing we've got to be concerned about, I installed this at FAU. I'm trying to get us to folks here. We keep bringing fees up at every meeting, but we don't add them up. So, well, this is only a cup of coffee today. You know, that's what you hear. And this is just a tank of gas on this fee. But when you add them up, they become like Boston University that has 10% tuition and 90% fees. So I think all of these things, they've got to be bundled together so the student really understands and the public understands what we're really charging for.
Yeah, I agree. We've got to make sure that people have this opportunity. I mean, think of how many people, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people in this room had the same issue. It was not easy to get started. And thank goodness we had the opportunity to get an education. So, and look, I think all these things, if you look at around our state today, one of the great things about our state, we're having conversations about all the major issues. You know, we have to. And so I think this conversation about, you know, getting a return on investment, affordability, results, I think it's great. And there's no, I think we start the process right. I'm sure that you'll figure out a way to do it where make sure we get a return. We don't lose the fact that we want people to become educators. We want people to go into fine arts. And we want to make sure that taxpayers' money gets spent well.
Other questions? Cortez.
Yes. Governor, thank you for being here with us today. As far as the conversation on return on investment goes, I know that us as students, that's one of our initiatives that we're looking to do, or to kind of put that in the forefront of taxpayers' dollars, as well as the presidents of the university. So I was wondering, is there anything that the state does or could do that you think could show taxpayers how much of return the institutions are, the economic development in the regions for each institutions, just so that we can kind of have a better picture, or at least taxpayers anyway, exactly where their money's going, how it develops throughout the state, and sort of what goes on, you know, at the institutions and regionally. So.
Yeah, you mean per university?
Kind of per university and as a system.
Absolutely. I mean, almost everything that the first thing. Way I go through it, I just finished a couple-hour meeting talking about an issue, and it went, okay, so the first decision, what the living daylights do we want? Okay, so, I mean, the hardest thing you can figure out is where do you want to go, right? Then once you go there, are you willing to set a measurable goal? And then are you willing to have the goal have impact? I mean, if you set up these goals, you measure it, but there's no repercussions, who cares? So if economic development around our universities is important to us, you can set a goal and you can measure it. That's not something we've done. At the same time, we've had a lot of success. Yes, sir.
Look, I understand your emphasis on STEM. I'm a STEM graduate as an undergrad, and the reason I did it was I wanted a job when I got out. So I totally understand that. But there's a lot of ways to get there with the system that we have. And I think Poly was a mistake and is going to be very cost ineffective. The good news is that, and this board, and there was several members on this board, didn't think we should have it at all. Majority of the board said yes, but not now. You know, let's put some conditions on it, such as accreditation, and we don't even have any students. So I guess the good news is that this board's worked very hard. Maury's got a committee, has worked very hard on this. I think Maury and Dean identified for us, which we approved, some very good trustees who I think are very independent. You have done that too, in my opinion. Very good trustees. I think having Rob Goodell as your chairman is a great move. So the horse is out of the barn, but it's not out of the corral. And so I know you talk about costs. And at one time, when I was arguing against this, I think to start it up was like $1 million for the first group of students. And so I would just ask you to, and ask our board as it goes forward, and ask the Board of Trustees, which I think you got a lot of good people here, to keep looking at what it really costs and whether this really makes sense. And so I would really ask you to do that. But I understand STEM's important.
Yeah, I think the Board of Governors put on some very good board members. I think Rob Goodell's doing a good job. I don't think it's easy, so it wasn't like you probably saw some of the things I ran on. I had 7 steps. It wasn't one of my 7 steps. So it wasn't something I thought of my entire campaign and campaigned on. So, but I think we have an opportunity there if we do it well. So
I just add one other thought here. I just get the feeling in watching this evolve, because I have a big interest in it, is that the impression this board has, and maybe the new Board of Trustees, is it's full steam regardless of the cost. And all I'm asking is that we pay attention as this process moves forward to what is this really costing us? And what is it taken away from other ways that we can get more STEM degrees from the universities that we have? Thank you.
I agree. I think that it's interesting. You go back, if you ever sit in this job, nobody does really want to go back and measure anything that happened in the past.
Right.
I mean, it's not the first thing people come up with and say, let's measure that, and are you really getting a return? No, we're funding that. We ought to keep funding that. But here's another way we ought to fund something similar. So I agree. We have to watch how we spend all the money, including Polytech, and make sure we're getting a return.
We're also spending a lot of time on this. This board, I know, has spent a lot of time on this.
Governor, I think that in the context of what we're doing, we should also look at the consumers, because it's like when people are looking for an education, they want it to lead to something. Am I going to get a job? Am I going to go to undergraduate, go to graduate school? And then what value am I mean, that's the kind of stuff that normal human beings, the points that you've delineated, those are the kind of things that normal human beings go through when they think about, do I invest in this? Do I go to trade school? Do I go to university system? So I think it's incumbent upon us to have a more efficient system, more accountable system, and a more transparent system so people can do the value. I think in one of the recent articles I read was Texas has something about a $10,000 degree. I mean, I know people shudder when they say, "Oh, that's too little," but really, is it too little? Maybe we should have a stronger relationship with the community college system, with our 2+2 plan. So there are all kinds of ways to get there from here, but I think that what we need to do is not just not look at it from the standpoint of the students as well, because they are the ultimate consumers.
Right. It's their time, their money, eventually, and I mean, think about how much debt these kids are ending up with. I mean, when I was going to school, nobody would lend money to me, but I'm sure they were worried about getting their money back. So, but they would lend money to me, and probably thank goodness I might have borrowed some. So, and it's a lot of money, and it doesn't go away ever. You got to pay it back.
Governor?
Yes, sir.
Governor, just recently, your Blue Ribbon Committee just came up with a bunch of recommendations, and you see our job is we deal with 11 university presidents, and they have their boards. What do you see as our job, the Board of Governors?
Well, here's the way I look at your job. I mean, you're responsible for the university system. It ought to work like a system. We ought to be looking at, where is the state going? Where do we want the state to go? We ought to be making decisions about where should we allocate assets? It's no different than what I would do in business. I'd say, okay, so I have this goal. Where should I allocate the assets to get the biggest return? And make sure that we create, as Matt Carter said, it's got to be efficient. We've got to respond to what students need, what families need, what businesses need. Because ultimately, if we don't solve the business need, there's not going to be any jobs. I mean, that's where the jobs are going to come from. But I think this group has to run a system. It needs to operate like a system. If you don't, you're never going to get great return on investment.
Do you think by using the 11 university we can create synergy and thus bring the return on investment?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've not met one person in the system that doesn't have that goal. Now, I don't know that we create the incentives for that.
So, so that brings up my question I was getting. Really want to ask. So do you believe in performance funding, meaning the Board of Governors?
It does work.
It does work. So
and it works in everything else. Anybody that's in business knows it works. I mean, just think about something as simple as these workforce boards. Okay, when I came into office, workforce boards we had workforce boards that were. One spent $4 million on office space and then moved out. They doing massages and all sorts of things for their employees. We had no earthly idea how many jobs they were filling. And now, by getting ranked every day, in less than a year, they went from filling very few jobs to 50-some thousand jobs in a state that still has 800,000 people unemployed. Yeah, it sort of works.
So that means that there will be a bunch of money given to the Board of Governors, and I don't know what bunch means, but some money to give out based on performance.
I believe that we ought to. Okay, sorry. This is families' money across the state, and let's all always remember that everybody in our state pays taxes. They pay sales tax and they pay property tax. If you don't own the property and you're renting it, you're paying the property tax. So every family, rich and poor, they're paying taxes in our state. Over 50% of the people in our state make less than $50,000 a year. So everybody in our state, this is their money. They want to get a return. So we ought to just say to ourselves and allocate the money based on returns, on results. Okay, is it affordable? Do we get a job? That's what they want. They want their kid to get a job. That's what I want for. I have daughters. I want them working. I want my grandson, he's almost a year. When he gets out of school, I want him to work.
Thank you.
Governor, Norman.
Governor,
I'm sorry.
Well, first, and I echo the sentiments. I want to say thank you very much for the attention that you've paid to higher education. We appreciate that. I do have a question. I think that there seems to be a philosophical shift, and particularly since we all are appointed by you or someone who's in your office, I'm interested in your position on it, because it's pretty clear to me that if you look at the legislative budget from last year, that there was a belief by legislators that there needed to be a shift and a greater contribution from families to help support higher education. So they say, yes, all of us pay taxes, and we're going to allocate so much. But if you looked at how there was an assumption that there would be the 15% increase across the board, and that's what the universities had to work with, there seemed to be in their minds this belief that there would be a greater contribution from families. But that seemed to contradict your belief system of, because I know that you were really against the tuition increase, so it seemed to be there was a big conflict between what the legislature kind of felt that we should go with our cost for higher education versus your vision for it. So I'm kind of interested in how you guide us. I could probably know the answer, but
you can help me with the legislature.
But it creates conflict.
So I'm very concerned about the cost of education. So but I also believe that we have to invest, but we have to get a return. And I've never been in a business that I didn't think that there was efficiencies that I hadn't taken advantage of yet. So, and you also know the system is I get to propose a budget, and the legislature, is that the way it works, Senator? I've been reminded that, by the way, but I don't get to appropriate any dollars. So I work with the legislature. I have what my objectives, but basically the budget is just an allocation of taxpayers' money. It's all. Shoot, anybody would love to get to do everything and have nobody have to pay for it. So, but we just have limited dollars from the taxpayers and what they're willing to give government for all the different services we provide. So, my goal is to invest the dollars into higher ed. I want to make sure we get a return. I want to keep the cost of living, the cost of education as low as possible, so all families can participate. Because I know families do want. Kids want to go to school. I go to schools in nice areas and go to schools where people don't have as much money. Everybody knows the value of education. Every one of these kids, and they all want jobs. Different jobs. They have different interests. Some of them do want to do fine arts. But they all want to get an education.
On the other side, one of the things that I think it's important, and I believe it's where you're going to, is we need to deregulate a little bit with the universities so they can be entrepreneurial. One of the things that we're doing now is market rate tuition on some of the upper courses, and they're being effective. It's a way for them to get additional revenue, because if the market is there and people are going for the master's degrees, et cetera, they're willing to pay a little more. And I think if we continue on that level, we can help the universities become something different than maybe what they've been before.
And the way I look at it is that, I always joke about this. My mom, I love my mom. She, but I didn't like her telling me what to do all the time. It's one of the reasons why I moved. You
were 12.
I was ready when I was 7. That's one of the reasons I went to work, so I'd have my own money. I think we have to look at everything we're doing and say, what's fair, what's a return. I don't believe that we should just look at everything as here's an opportunity, because people have an interest that we ought to raise the cost. So I think we've got to look at, can we do this less expensively? In business, today you'd say, all right, can I do that training less expensively? So is there an opportunity to do some more things online? So you'd think there would be.
Governor, Governor Beard.
Yeah, Governor, I'm the chairman of the Facilities Task Force, and as you know...
That's easy with all the extra money you've had lately.
That's right. As you know, but this system has been blessed over the years with PICO, and it's no longer available to us at this point in time, but the best we can tell.
I came into the government at the right time.
Right now, no money. So we just had a report presented to this board by President Bentz that is looking at alternative ways to finance some of the facilities we're going to need in the future, because this system's going to grow. We have to grow, or we're not going to be able to provide the room that we need. And we're hoping that we can meet with you soon and visit with it and try to come to some sort of an agreement as it relates to all this stuff. So I just wanted to say we're encouraged about the report, but we know that we've got to work something out with it.
So I always go back to trying to think about how I would look at that if I was in business. First thing I'd say is, okay, I have all these assets. How well do I utilize the existing assets? Do we utilize these assets well? Can I share assets with somebody else? Can I get somebody else to pay for it? When I started my hospital company, I'd saved $125,000, so I figured out how somebody else would do a lot. Because I bought the first 2 hospitals for $61 million. So I think one thing we have to look at is, one, are we utilizing all of our assets well? What assets could we better utilize or do something different with to get a better return? Will the outside world fund things that they're not funding today?
We're looking at that.
Yeah, and they should. So, but I look forward to sitting down.
Governor, I know you got a lot to do. I have one, the other day I was interviewed, and I talked about the tension that exists between access and affordability and then paying for quality and that tension's always going to exist.
In every business.
In every single business.
In every business, too.
And I think the one thing you have a right to demand of us is, to the extent that we ask a taxpayer or a student to pay one more dollar, that for that new dollar, we have to have an appropriate return on we have to, we haven't, in the history of higher education in the state, we haven't had that kind of accountability system. I think this board is committed to that kind of it's a work in progress. We're getting better at it, and the metrics change, but we're getting better every year at it. So, and I can commit to you that our board is all committed to that, to make sure that that's happening.
I've tried to think, any business I've ever been in, I've invested in, run a variety of companies. I can't remember anybody coming to me and said, you know what, I think we ought to spend less money. And so, but my view is, okay, so let's figure out first what the consumer is willing to pay, whoever the buyer is, because it might not matter what I believe in. It's what are they willing to spend money on, and and there's always somebody out there competing with me. And I mean, I've never had never been in a monopoly situation, so I think that I think all this is good. Yeah. I think you do. I think there's a healthy conversation going on, and I'll tell you what you do know about the people that are involved in higher education. They care a lot about students, and do they get jobs? Yep. They know that. That's what the goal is, and they do. I've not met one person that didn't.
Well, Governor, we thank you.
Governor, we do have a two-system higher education system, 2 levels. Do you think there's a difference in the mission of the state colleges versus the universities? And should the universities have a higher mission of some sort? I know we want job users, but do we want job creators in the future?
Well, we do have the state colleges, and we have our universities. I think in some areas they do have different goals, but in some areas they're doing something very similar. I mean, some of them have the exact same degrees that the universities have, which I'm not sure I understand why we do that. No one's explained that to me. But yeah, I mean, there ought to be. You would think there would be different goals, but I don't think that's anyone has done that. I mean, I always try to think about where I am. I said, okay, I'm here. I'm at point A. I want to get to point Z. The first thing is where do I want to go, and then the only thing in the middle typically is money and people. And so if we can define where we want to be, you can solve these 2 issues usually. The hard thing is, where do we want to go? And then, of course, are we willing to measure ourselves to get there? And it's not the easiest thing. Everybody says they like measurement until it's them.
Governor, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a 5-minute break.